Now, India's food plate is the greenest in the world. Wondering what greenest means? Well, it doesn't mean that there are most greens on our plate, but being the greenest means that the toll that our food takes on the environment is the lowest in the world. In fact, the Indian food consumption patterns are the most sustainable amongst all the G20 countries. Following India in ranking are Indonesia, China, recognized again for their environmentally sustainable diet patterns, while usual suspects, United States, Argentina, Australia have the least sustainable food consumption practices. Now, how is this categorization actually done? The report is detailed and it talks about promoting traditional foods as an important lever. So the more indigenous the food, the more sustainable it becomes. Let's dive in a little deeper into why that happens. You have that map on your screen as well. Now, India's diverse culinary landscape features a blend of vegetarian, non-vegetarian diets. In the northern regions, for example, staples include lentils, wheat-based rotis, often accompanied by some meat dishes as well. In contrast, southern India predominantly sort of enjoys rice-based fermented foods like idli, dosa, typically served with a sambar or a chutney. Various types of fish are a staple in, say, the western, eastern, northeastern regions as well, along with a rich array of age-old millets, such as jowar, bajra, ragi, broken wheat, also known as dalia. So there is no one standard diet that India follows. And it is this diversity, eating local, eating what the natural environment actually throws at you, is what gets India the top place in the world. Now let's also look at the science behind what kind of food takes a toll on the environment. Did you know that producing just 1 kg of beef requires approximately 15,000 liters of water, generating around 60 kgs of CO2 emissions? In comparison, pork, about 1 kg again, 6,000 liters of water, 7 to 12 kgs of CO2 emissions. 1 kg of chicken, on the other hand, needs about 4,300 liters of water, producing about 6 kg of CO2 per kilogram. And it's not just about water and emission. The environmental toll of red meat, like beef, pork, far outweigh that of white meat, such as chicken or any other sustainably sourced fish. White meat requires less feed, less water, results in fewer greenhouse gases as well. That's why many advocate often suggesting shifting towards fish and chicken for a more sustainable, climate-friendly diet. So bottom line here really is, for India, what works and what should be a model emulated by the world is eating local, eating what our grandmothers used to feed, eating what is in season, making use of the local produce. And that is not just great for your body, but also really good for the environment. Now, isn't that a twist that we never really talk about? But that's the focus today. And joining me today are two very fascinating guests. We've got Krish Ashok with us. He's the author and expert in science of Indian cooking. Also with us is Dr. Manjari Chandra, nutritionist, who will sort of share more light with us on this issue. Dr. Manjari, let me sort of begin with you first. Good morning. What a morning to wake up to, right? To eat local, to talk about Indian food with a lot of pride, to world waking up to the fact that it's not just great for your body, but great for the climate as well. Now, for those watching right now, what is the key takeaway here? Is the key takeaway that a lot of us who sort of gravitate towards things like a Mediterranean diet or eating only sort of, no carb diet or stuff like that, which seems to be in trend off and on, that ain't really cutting it when it comes to sustainability. What makes sense is eating what is in season, what is local.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you, Sonal. In fact, when we talk to our patients and people we speak to and work in our clinical setups, when we speak about what is it that they should avoid putting on their plate, it's packaged, processed, tinned, canned food. The next we've added to it is transported food. So if food is coming from really 7 oceans away to you and it requires that time of transportation, not only is it depleted in nutrition, it is really not the right thing to eat, because it takes up so much bandwidth of the earth's, all forms of fuels and transportation costs and effort that is required, which is absolutely not one of the things that we need to do. In fact, this whole fascination, or this whole thing of only eating certain types of berries or avocados or certain nuts which don't indigenously grow in India but have a nutritive value that people understand is good for their bodies, is catching up so fast that it's putting a great load on our system. And that's why we keep talking to people and telling them that if you do want to eat an avocado once in a while, it's okay, but there are good fats that we have locally, seasonally, native fats that you can eat that are as good as what an avocado would offer you. The same goes for multiple other things, like berries and nuts that we don't grow. And all of them have an alternative in Indian palate. So that's one, thinking that only one type of food that's transported from another area can give you nutrition is a sort of a wrong perception that people have built in. And one more thing that really contributes to how we eat more sustainably for the ecosystem and for the planet is that, it was ingrained into us that food is grown by the farmer. It comes to our plate with a lot of effort, and we take a lot of pride in not wasting or, putting anything away. We tend to repurpose, reuse, recycle all our food. And it's beautiful the way if something goes wrong, we ferment it. If we can't use it now, we pickle it and keep it until we can use it when it's ready to be used. So there are so many formats of cooking and preservation and reuse that are part of our, culinary systems, which also add to this whole ecosystem sustainability.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of conventional wisdom in what earlier was done, which there was a wave where we kept sort of looking at the West for nutrition, for dietary habits, for a lot of things. And now we are in this phase where we are saying that, okay, let's come back to our roots. You don't, like you rightly said, you don't need an avocado, you don't need asparagus as a great source of protein. There are great things which can be sourced within India that can really solve the problem for you. Because, and here I want you to, Dr. Manjari, sort of draw in a parallel. A lot has been said about red meat, and what we hear from the other side then is that, hey, do you think, where are your avocados really coming from? Where are your asparaguses really coming from? They're also being flown halfway across the world. So the climate cost of these products is as bad perhaps as any of the red meats that we speak about.
So absolutely, transportation is something that people have to start looking into, because if the food is being flown, as you said, across 7 continents and is reaching your plate, it's definitely not a sustainable way of eating, and not for the large population of the world. In India, what we grow indigenously and what is available, we have a fertile land, we have a land of rivers and fertile soil, and we have the capability to produce almost every form of crop and vegetable and fruit and nut and seed. And I don't think that, one, to start with, there's a requirement to import or take in a lot of any specific food. Second is that, this whole conversation about meat, whether you look at health, whether you look at longevity, whether you look at aging, whether you look at metabolic health, mitochondrial health, we know now, research has already proven that all of this is this is better when you're depending more on plant food. So when you're eating more plants, you have better mitochondrial metabolic health, more longevity. And this is already proven by research. So the second part of choosing animal food itself is not a health or nutritional requirement. That's one beginning bit. And a lot of people who recently the ICMR told us that protein supplements are not something that are required for most people. We also know that meat is not a standard part of a healthy protein-rich diet. Plants can do the bit. And you know, in fact, a very funny anecdote. I was speaking to somebody yesterday, a cancer patient, and she said that, should I take a plant protein because I'm vegetarian? And I said, this is so ironic that you eat plants, and now they're saying because you eat plants, you should take a plant protein as a supplement. That's so ironical, yes. So this whole thing of eating meat and beef, and beef being, of course, we know the type of emissions that are associated with the type of processed meat across the world that is being made. I definitely think time for introspection, and it's great that besides yoga and fasting, we now also are recognized as people who eat more sustainably, and we can be a model for the world to follow, really.
Yeah. Manjari, I want you to sort of talk to us a little bit about what then should one look at if today somebody watching this show says that, okay, this makes a little bit sense. It's going to be more affordable on the pocket if I'm eating local and seasonal. It will be easier on the planet if it's local and seasonal. It's easier on my gut if it's local and seasonal. So what should one look at? Can you tell me the top 3 things if I'm going out to shop veggies and get my fruits this season that one should sort of be an identifier as?
Yeah, that's a good one. But just to like put this in perspective, just a line here. What we eat is not just food, it's information for the body. It's our bioregulatory systems, our physiology is thriving on the food that we eat. And it's also genetic information, which means that how our genes turn on and off is also controlled by what we eat. For example, just a small example, the type of fat that you eat will change the gut microbiome. So there is something called short chain fatty acids that our gut microbiome make that allow us to stay healthy. Now this choice of fat, the more it is closer to what our ancestors ate, the more it genetically aligns with my body and creates the right type of genetic expression, which is whether the genes get on or off based on that food. So it's also important to understand that when we're choosing food, the more close it is to what we genetically grew up on, as the other panelist also mentioned, the easier it will be on your system, the more healthier it will be, and the more it will allow you to function in the most optimal manner. And to answer your questions, I think 3 quick takeaways when you go out shopping. One of the things that you should pick up when you pick up fruits is that local Fussu guava, that doesn't look really nice. It's not big, it's tiny, it's discolored, but it's locally produced. It's filled with antioxidants and vitamin C and phytochemicals. Pick up local berries, you need not necessarily pick blueberries and blackberries and strawberries. Local berries, for example, in India you get something called falsa and kokum and the larger berries and blackberries. So the local berries, whatever season they grow in, pick them up, because what happens is when we look at antioxidant property, all these are highly susceptible to denaturing with transportation, with packaging, with time. So the more local they are, the more potent the antioxidant activity is. And I think the third thing we should pick up is good fat in the form of local nuts and seeds, coconut if it's available in your area, and ghee. I mean, we could make ghee at home. That's one practice we could start doing,
Yeah. Krish, I'm glad you brought in the organic factor here, and this is something that a lot of people... Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Manjari,
No, just one thing, because he mentioned about, one of the things that we have to remember about fruits and vegetables is that the more beautiful and more structured and more shiny they look, the less healthier they are. In fact, if you remember when we were growing up, cauliflowers and ladyfingers would have bugs in them, like actual insects and little pests coming out of it. Today they don't have it because we're adding so much of insecticides and pesticides. So if you find a vegetable which is not so beautiful to look at, which is not so formed, which is discolored, which has a little bit of, life thriving in it, it's definitely a better pick than what looks more beautiful on the exterior. Just wanted to add that to what Krish was saying,
Manjari, Krish, Ashok, thank you so much both for joining us on this very fascinating discussion. So what have we taken away from all of this? We've taken away eating ugly vegetables, eating disformed fruits, and also ensuring that what you eat is not just great on the plate, but helps the planet as well. Now that's something that's a good morning to sort of wake up to. On that note, we're going to slip into a break. Coming up on the other side, we've got lots lined up. First up, the SpaceX archives historic catch. They reuse